This morning, I'm going to teach on Brother. It's by Needtobreathe. How many of you have heard this song, Brother? No, that's okay. Some? Okay. So we're talking in this series. We extended it this week since Matt ended up needing to be out of town. Michelle's dad's funeral was this weekend, and so just keep them in prayers. They're traveling back late tonight. So we extended the series a little bit longer, and Matt was like, hey, any song at all that you want to teach on? So I started thinking about this theme of things that have saved my life, and then can songs be woven into that? And for me, I would imagine for a lot of y'all, and it's something that we talk about here, the thing that has saved my life, I think, regularly is the people around me. It's this sense of community, this sense of belonging. And sometimes that's a person pouring into me. Sometimes that's a group of people that are coming alongside me, whatever that looks like. But here in the Crossing, that's a theme we talk about a lot, right? Is that we're about people. The things like brunch are important, or the parties that we have, because it's an opportunity to build relationships deeper than what we're able to do on Sunday morning. And our hope and our prayer is that those relationships continue to be formed, to be developed outside of just maybe this hour on a Sunday morning, that you're able to continue to grow in that and get to know people. And so that's kind of what I want to unpack a little bit this morning, is this idea of community, of people coming alongside, of why it's necessary and why it can be helpful. I think Sam is going to come in a few minutes and sing, but before she does, I would love for us to listen to the scripture. I don't have it on the slides because y'all know me and technology. Like, we're doing great to have it this far. Like, I have some slides up there, so we're going to celebrate that. But Suzanne's going to read the scripture for us. Let me get you a microphone. It's from Acts chapter 2. I just want y'all to listen to it, and then when Sam plays the song, have kind of these words running through your head as you listen to it.
Acts 2:42 through 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks. So this passage is as the early church is being formed, right? So it's the beginning of Acts. The Spirit has come. We've celebrated Pentecost, and they're trying to figure out how to do life together. And it talks about them being rooted and grounded in this faith foundation that is what brings them together. And when they talk about all these people, it's Jews and Greeks, Gentiles, it's everybody coming together, sharing a common table, which was a really big deal for Jews and Gentiles to share because of the type of food, the kosher food laws, but they were working it out. They were figuring out what it looked like to do faith together, to be brothers and sisters, to be one community. Sam, you can come on up. To be one community united, and it wasn't easy. This passage of scripture makes it seem really simple, but if you look at the bigger picture, we see and know that that was much more complicated than what those verses would lay out. They had to have real conversations about, this is the faith I grew up with, and what does this mean now? What does it mean for me to believe in a Messiah and no longer believe that I have to live into any of these kosher food laws or Sabbath laws in the same way that I have always had to? It reminds me a lot, the work that they're doing is something else that we've talked about in this class of when faith becomes yours. It's no longer the t-shirt that's too small that you grew up with, that is your parents' faith. It's really your faith. So they're working through that together. So I want y'all to keep that in mind a little bit while Sam sings us Brother. If you're ready, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks,
Checking
Sam.
the metronome.
Yeah. And I'll turn my microphone off because I think Joseph sang with y'all
Sarah.
last week.
It's meant to be a sing-along, so. Ramblers in the wilderness, we can't find what we need. Get a little restless from the searching, get a little worn down in between. Like a bull chasing the matador is a man left to his own schemes. Everybody needs someone beside him, shining like a lighthouse from the sea. Brother, let me be your shelter, never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. And brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home. Face down in the desert now, there's a cage locked around my heart. Found a way to drop the keys where my failures were, now my hands can't reach that far. I ain't made for rivalry, I could never take the world alone. I know that in my weakness I am strong, but it's your love that brings me home. Brother, let me be your shelter, I never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home. And when you call and need me near, saying, where did you go? Brother, I'm right here. And on those days when the sky begins to fall, you're the blood of my blood, we can get through it all. Brother, let me be your shelter, never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home. And brother, let me be your shelter, never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. And brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home.
Thank you, Sam. That was perfect. Now I have to turn it back on. Okay, we're good. Thank you, Sam. So this song with Needtobreathe came out of a dark place for the band. They were at a place where they were fighting more than they were making music. They had kind of lost their relationships, and I was watching this video of them talking about it, and there's a couple things that kind of grabbed hold of me. What they said was at some point they decided that those relationships were more important than making music. And so they took 6 months off, 8 months off, and decided we're not writing, we're not playing, we're gonna work this out. We're gonna figure this thing out together. And so they decided that this relationship, this love that they had, when they found when they reconnected, they realized it was their driver from the beginning, and they had kind of lost it in the midst of it. And once they worked through that stuff, they were able to be more creative. They realized that this shared interest was really important between them. And what they also realized is that these people in the band that they were doing life with, the way that they were challenging one another actually made them end up being more true to who they were. But they had to remember the love before they encountered the challenge, because otherwise it wasn't heard in that way. They see this potential in one another. And then they talk about this fight that was happening. And the way they talk about it, it makes me feel like it was a physical brawl. Like they say like, and then my brother came in and he jumped on the other guy's back. And I was like, oh, like this was like fighting, like brothers, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. But he said what he realized in that moment, even though they were in the midst of this own internal struggle, was that his brother had his back no matter what. So it didn't matter what was going on in their relationship. He was going to be there for him and show up in these dark moments. And then they said this line that really resonated with me, and I'm going to unpack a bunch of this in a minute. But they said, on your own, you're going to struggle no matter what. And so why would you choose that path? Why would you choose that path? And so it made me start thinking about this sense of community and who are the people that we surround ourselves with. Who pours into you, pours into me? Who do we allow to speak truths into us and actually receive them? Versus where do we allow people to speak lies over us and buy into that as well? You have to choose carefully who's speaking over you and into you. Who's in your corner even when you aren't in your corner? Who's going to remind you of who you are and who you were made to be? What I'm asking is, who are your people that share the same interests as you, or maybe the same life stage, or maybe they've shared enough life with you that they know all your dirt, so you got to keep them close, right? Like they're your people, and you're going to do anything you can to keep that relationship solid. Who are your people? Who are your 2 a.m. people? When the world is falling apart and you need someone to show up, whether that's like, I don't know, like a house in the midst of a hurricane that you need someone to come help you with, or you need somewhere to stay, or when life has just hit the fan, when it's falling apart and you need to call someone to come alongside you. Who are your 2 a.m. people? We're created for community. When I think about Genesis and the story of creation, right, there's this line after God has created Adam, and he says, it's not good for man to be alone. And in that, I don't think that he literally just means like in a relationship, a man needs to have a partner. I think what that means is we were all created for community around us. Whether we're in that kind of relationship or not, we are hardwired for relationships, for people to be pouring into us and for us to be pouring into others, because it's when we're isolated that we can get in trouble and things can start to turn. One of the things that stood out was this idea they challenge you because they see potential in you. I have this awkward friend. She's here today. I won't point at her. But, and when I say awkward friend, what I mean is that when we are together, there is always something awkward that is going to happen and unfold, okay? Delights us, gives us great stories. We sometimes encourage the awkwardness because it just is... We enjoy it. Others around us, not as much, but we enjoy it. And so she's been a part of my life a long time, though, and we have a lot of stories that we can tell on each other about the awkward stuff. One that came to mind while I was preparing this was when we went to Schlitterbahn, like I don't even know how many years ago, with like a bunch of her family and friends, and we were waiting in line. We had an odd number in our group, and so we knew that one of us was going to be riding with a stranger, and it was like one of those slides at Schlitterbahn that like is the double inflatable like thing, you know? So like an awkward situation to be with a stranger in, like it's just kind of, you know, weird. But we knew somebody was going to end up that way. It's fine. Like we embraced it. We like, I don't know, drew straws or something and figured it out. It was me. I was odd man out, and that's okay. So we identified this early on, that I was going to be by myself. So naturally, what I did then was talk to everybody in line around me to figure out who it was that I was going to be riding with, right? Like, who's around us that I'm going to be getting on this thing with? And it ended up being this woman who was terrified. I don't know why she was up there, scared to death of water slides and going through the tunnel. And that's who I was paired up with. And so we get up there, and like everybody else in our group goes, and then she's like, I can't do it. And so we get out. Like, we're already on the tube in, at Schlitterbahn, they have that big water tub thing before it, like, shoots out. We're already in there. So we get out of it, and, like, which is awkward again, and we, like, are waiting, and, like, they're waiting at the bottom for us, right? And I'm like, okay, we can do this. And she's like, I can't do this. And I was like, look, you're just going to have to scream the whole way. It's going to be okay. And I'll scream with you. It's going to be fine. We're going to do it. So we, like, ended up getting in the tube and, like, finally went, and y'all, when I say she screamed, that whole tube, like, echoing. I'm pretty sure the group could identify where we were on the ride because of the way that her scream was echoing, and I was yelling with her. Like, I was all for it. We got to the bottom, and, like, I was hoarse, but it's fine. We had a great time. She made it. And that in and of itself, like, that's great. Like, that's a great story to tell. But what really struck me was later on, we were walking through the park, and she was now with her whole family and came running up to us and was like, you're the people that told me I could do it. She rode and then introduced us to her whole family. Like, for the rest of the day, anytime we saw her in the park, she was like, those are my best friends, right? And so stuff like that happens all the time with my awkward friend. But also, like, in this weird moment that we shared in this tube, I became part of that woman's family, right? And I became part of her story. I became part of her community at Schlitterbahn, which is a real weird, like, situation. But for the rest of the day, right, like, we were bonded in this way. Now, Katie and I could share 1,000 stories of awkwardness that have happened, and that was probably one of the better endings in terms of, they're all funny. You can talk to her later. But it came to mind because it's like this idea of, like, Katie has all these stories, these shared experiences. I have them on her. And then who are these other people that now I am part of their community that I may never actually interact with again? Like, there was something that was called out of her that day, this stranger that now, however many years later, I can't even tell you her name anymore, that spoke to her in such a way that I became part of her community. I was able to name something in her and bring it out of her so that she could summon courage enough to scream down that slide, which is a silly example, but who are the people that are going to call that out of you? Like, when you're in the midst of whatever struggle, trial, or even celebration, who are the people around you that are going to remind you who you were created to be? That you have those things inside of you that are going to sharpen you like iron sharpens iron and remind you who you were created to be, that you can indeed take this next step. To not get intimidated by the 500 steps that are between you and whatever that goal is, or the accomplishment, or the relationship that needs to be mended or ended, or whatever it is. Just take that next step. That they're going to be with you to remind you that you can do it and that you're not alone. That they're going to take that step with you. That they're not going to abandon you, that they're going to help maybe even push you on the water slide so that you move and don't get frozen in fear. And they're going to acknowledge that it's hard, and they're going to cry with you, and they're going to struggle with you, but the point is that they're with you. And they're not going to abandon, they're not going to go anywhere. They're there for the good, the hard, the real, and sometimes they see more in you than you see in yourself. Who are your people? For me, this friendship over decades now, multiple, yeah. We have good moments, we have bad moments, we've had valleys and hills in our lives, but we've been able to show up, to remind each other, hey, remember, we went through this before, we can do it again. Hey, I know this situation is different, but this is who I know you to be. And so you got this. You don't have to worry. You can keep going. You can put one foot in front of the other. She challenges me to dig deeper, to face truth when it's a hard truth that I don't want to face, but also to encourage me and call me back to who I am. Who has your back no matter what? On your own, you're going to struggle no matter what. So you have to have people who are in your corner, who are going to fight for you. I asked earlier who your 2 a.m. people are. that are going to show up and drop everything and cover you? Do you have people that you can be real with? That you can share like the dark, scary parts that you don't want to face on your own. Can you let them see those pieces of you? Can you take that kind of vulnerability and share it with another? I'm not saying that this has to be every conversation with someone. I'm not saying that this has to be your first conversation with someone. That kind of vulnerability has to be built up. There has to be a deep level of trust there. And sometimes there are people in your life that you encounter that you can share like that immediately. Or maybe it's set up in such a way that you're supposed to or be able to. But who are those people? Who know you? All of you. We end up carrying these heavy things sometimes, and the longer that they stay in the dark, the scarier and the bigger they become. And it's fascinating because then once you reach up this vulnerability, this trust someone, and you start to say it, it becomes not as big. Or maybe it's as big but not as scary. Some light is shed on it, and it doesn't hold as much power over you. Maybe it's because you know that you're not carrying the burden alone anymore. That you have someone who's going to walk alongside you, not take it on as their own in an unhealthy way, but to be there with you, to encourage you, to call you deeper into this. I'm going to share an example from Scripture, and I'm not trying to proof text. I don't want it to become something that it's not. But I think there is something to the fact that Jesus had 12 disciples. Beyond like when we want to make that the 12 tribes of Israel, I do think there's something to that. But I think he had 12 people that he walked alongside for years. And out of that 12, really, he had 3 that were his people, that were with him for the big moments like the transfiguration, and that were there with him in the bad, sucky moments like the garden. They weren't perfect in the garden. They fell asleep in his hour of need when he needed them to be praying with him and for him, and yet they were still his people. They were there. They showed up. They walked alongside him. Who are our people that are going to be there when everything hits the fan, that are going to be with us through the end? The other thing that stood out to me in this song that I had to pause was that they decided this relationship was more important. They are all musicians. And the musicians that I have known in my life, it's hardwired into them. It's part of who they are. It's their very being. And for this group of people to pause and say, no, we need to stop because this relationship is more important than music. They recognized that this part of them that was music, that was creating, wasn't able to function the way it needed to because other things were out of order and messed up. And so they paused to intentionally make the decision to make this relationship stronger. When we have the right people around us that are speaking life into us, allowing them to really know us, our best selves come out. We can be free to who we are. We can be relaxed and just be. And doesn't that sound like a breath of fresh air? To not have to put on any airs, any masks, any fake, that's harsh language, but sometimes guys, we power through and we make it seem like everything's okay when everything is falling apart. Who are your people that you can just be? That are going to speak truth and allow you to celebrate it. In Acts, in this passage that we read at the beginning, it's this beautiful vision of community and sharing resources. But it wasn't easily manufactured. It took intentional, hard work to get there. They had to have hard conversations about what was going to be on that table, about how they were going to respect and honor one another in the midst of that. They had to have hard conversations about how do we share resources, because this is mine. I worked hard for X, and now I'm supposed to just turn it over to community, to people I don't know. How do we build relationships so that I'm sharing with my brothers and my sisters? All of it points back to you having people that challenge you. Iron sharpens iron, that have your back, and that you're going to be able to build community with, because it's what the church, capital C, church, should be about. It's what we talk about in the crossing, that we aren't meant to live alone, to be isolated, to carry things in the dark, but we're going to have to choose one another. We're going to have to choose this place, choose these people, and choose vulnerability in order for any of that to come to light. We have to choose our people carefully that are going to speak truth into us, that are going to walk alongside us, and then we have to be committed to them, to walk alongside them. And have this faith undergird all of it. This foundation where we know at the end of the day that none of us are perfect, and yet all are loved and created in the image of God. And that has to be how we view one another, treat one another, if any of the rest of it is going to matter and come to fruition. I think community is important for you for all the reasons I've listed, so that you have people at 2 a.m., so that you have people who have your back. But I think more than that, and this is where I think it gets lost a lot of times when we talk about community, you need community because there are others that need you to be their 2 a.m. people, that need you to speak truth and call light into them, that need you to remind them of who they are and who they were created to be. Community is not just about you, it's about us. And it's about how we all come alongside one another and be each other's shelter, to make sure that nobody is left alone and that we are all able to travel together through life in our various stages that we have. A couple weeks ago, John preached in the sanctuary about Timothy and Paul's relationship. If you missed it, I would highly recommend that you go listen to it. Because it was all about mentors, who you have walking alongside you, but also who are you walking alongside? Who are you bringing up? Who's walking alongside you, pouring into you, but also the next step, which is equally as important, who are you pouring into as well? I guess what I want you to hear today is that relationships are hard and they're messy, but they're necessary for us. They're necessary for us to be able to do this thing called life. We have to come alongside, and we have to hear someone say, brother, sister, let me be your shelter. Let me make sure you never feel alone. Let me bring the cup of sugar when you need it, but also let me bring the chainsaw when the tree has fallen through the house. Let me bring the meal when you're in the midst of grief or going through whatever it is you're going through. And if you don't have those people right now, you need to find them. And they could be in this room. They could be people you already know, but you just haven't taken that step of vulnerability with. But we need to do this thing together, because it's the only way we're going to survive it. Let me rephrase it. We'll survive on our own. It's the only way that we're going to thrive, and that we're going to be who we're truly meant to be. When we talk about coming alongside one another, this was in our email this week, but Crossing and Chapelwood is going to be serving with the restoration team in a couple weeks. And when I think about the work that they have done over the last 6 years, I guess, since Harvey, 5 years as an organization, they're embodying this in some really amazing ways, to come alongside others, to make sure that their homes are safe, sanitary, and secure, to be able to say, hey, we have resources where you don't right now, and we're going to come alongside you, and we want to be a part of that. And so for the Crossing, we're going to serve on the second Saturday, the 14th. Is that the 14th? And we're going to go out and serve alongside homes. Trevor is actually going to be in the back if you want to talk to him more about the restoration team, about the work that they do, and their kind of future plans and where they're headed. I think they want to be more than just disaster, but there's certainly some 2 a.m. people to know in some certain scenarios.